The search engine is about a girl named Corliss who is trying to be a part of a world where whites look at Indians like they look at babies. Corliss is going through life trying to find her place. She's completely different than her fellow Indians on the reservation. She questions life, she takes advantage of opportunities, and conned her way into her higher education. She's a girl thirsty for more in life. She explains her passion for books as if they have feelings themselves. She discovers a book of poems written by an Indian, and she takes a trip to learn more about his journey and how he began to write. She learns from Atwater that life is complicated and being a poet is even harder. He explains how he thought he made a connection to the Indians in the bar, but to only learn that they didn't care. It shattered his dream and he stopped writing. In the book, The Search Engine, we see two very similar characters searching for the same thing, acceptance. Corliss and Atwater share the same love for books and wanting to be accepted by the reservation. For example, she endured a contentious and passionate relationship with this library. The huge number of books confirmed how much magic she'd been denied for most of her life, and how she hungrily wanted to read every book on the shelf. This explains how Corliss, who lives on the reservation, was denied her passion of reading and the ability to gain knowledge because her fellow Indian peers didn't believe in Indians growing up as intelligent and well off. Thus, being denied only drove her hunger for books and the power they represented. In addition, Harlan, who was raised by a white family, wanted desperately to know his Indian roots and thought he was being accepted when he shared his passion of poetry to them in a bar. For example, they all wanted copies of his books. Harlan was so happy, he gave them away for free. The Indians made Harlan feel like he was important and one of them. He felt for the first time that he belonged and was being accepted by the Indian culture, but they ended up dumping his poems on the empty streets. This was very heartbreaking for Harlan because he was the first Indian to have his poems published. Even though these events were similar, I found some important differences between Corliss and Harlan. Corliss fears expressing herself, therefore hiding her identity from the world because she doesn't want to face rejection. She lives alone so she doesn't have to room with a white girl feeling she'd be discovered, that she's not so special. She won't write stories because her Indian heritage did not support it. Harlan had the courage to express himself to the world, and even though he faced rejection, he took a chance and published 300 copies of In the Reservation in My Mind. In the story Search Engine, Corliss and Harlan are in an old bookstore full of used books, and he explains his life story to her. Corliss calls Harlan a lost bird because he is Spokane but isn't known by the community as Spokane Indian. Being a lost soul to me means that you're searching to find yourself and you have some idea of what you are, but have no idea what that entails. I feel that Harlan is more lost because he knows he's Indian but lacks the specifics. He doesn't have the desire of always returning home or the acceptance from his heritage because he was raised by white, therefore his home was never the reservation. He is forever lost. In addition, Corliss is also lost, but not as much. She understands where she's from. She understands how Indians don't question life, but she does. Her home is on the reservation, so she doesn't know what it's like to be denied by her heritage. She is lost because she lacks confidence and won't take a chance on herself and try to be accepted by a new community. In the end, I felt that Corliss changed the most. She typically has this drive to seek answers, but instead allows Harlan to walk away. For example, when Harlan hung up on Corliss, she traveled to Seattle to meet Harlan in person, along the way offering a homeless man a meal in exchange for directions. She refused to give up on finding clarity in how there's an Indian who writes poetry that no one's heard of. Towards the end of her conversation with Harlan, she asks his true name. Instead, he walks out. Allowing him to leave, she finally understands that needing to know everything isn't as important as respecting someone's wish to be invisible. I believe Sherman titled the story Search Engine because the characters are searching for answers of who they are inside. Corliss feels that she's the only one searching for herself, but when she meets Harlan, she realizes that he's also trying to find his purpose. Listening to Harlan's story was the end of her search. She found comfort in who she is. By placing the book of poems on the shelf, she is closing one chapter and preparing for a new one. Corliss's goal was to meet the poet Harlan and see for herself that Indian poets do exist. She expected to meet a brave, feisty man who wrote poetry and was living the dream. Instead, she found an unkept man whose spirit was broken. She wanted to believe that this man would be Indiana Jones and not some washed-up old man. In comparison, I personally experienced a similar disappointing event in my life. I always had this dream of going to an Ivy League school, but was told I'm not smart enough to attend an Ivy League school like Harvard. I thought that if I attended the best schools, received outstanding grades, and made honor roll, that this would prove to people that I can go to any school I wanted. I even wrote to Harvard asking them for advice on improving my chances of being accepted. They told me I was doing everything right and that knowledge is power. When the time came for me to apply to college, I knew for sure I had Harvard in the bag. However, I felt disappointed that I didn't get an acceptance letter to any Ivy League school. I felt defeated. I began to believe that they were right, that I wasn't good enough. This feeling changed a year ago when I looked back at my journey and saw all my hard work was being wasted. I decided to pick myself back up and believe in myself because I worked hard for my success and my journey wasn't over. I knew I didn't need any Ivy League school anymore, and that any school would be lucky to have me.